Alliance Advisors is a shareholder engagement firm. With me is Kevin Langdon, Senior Vice President, and Joseph Caruso, the CEO of Alliance Advisors. So thank you for coming. And Joseph, you could kind of just lay the groundwork for exactly what it is that Alliance Advisors does.
We do a lot of things. One of the biggest areas that we're involved with is public companies' engagement with their institutional investors and retail. So on two sides of the spectrum, one is on the, I'll call it the investor relations or capital market side, and on the other side of the spectrum is governance. Because typically with institutional money, there's two sides of the house, the ones that work on proxy voting and the ones that are making the decisions on buying and selling a stock. So what companies are typically looking for is they want to understand who's buying, who's selling, why, what the motivations are, and also assistance for things like investor targeting. And on the governance side, they want to understand, what motivates the vote, what they will vote for, how they'll vote, and then what to do, I'll call it, away from the proxy season, away from the shareholder meeting, on an engagement practice of what they could do with institutional investors to understand them better and bridge that gap between what they want and what management's doing.
And you have a new product, am I correct? Okay, so Kevin, could you explain what that is?
Yeah, we're really excited. We've brought to market a product called Invictus. So it's an integrated digital platform that provides transparency to shareholder engagement, shareholder activity, and shareholder data. So a lot of people may not understand what each of those categories are. What we've done is we've harnessed our internal database and IP through this platform. So now our clients can better understand what's driving investor decision-making, whether that's investment discretion decision-making, buying and selling of their shares, straight to how they plan on voting their proxies, straight to their governance considerations, if there's any governance concerns that may cause them to buy or sell a stock.
And what inspired you to come up with this product, and who's your target audience?
It's just the entire, so we service as a firm about 1,000 public companies global. And we felt that over the last 15 to 20 years, we have consumed and warehoused a tremendous amount of data, and it's an ongoing process. So in the process of a shareholder vote, we're gathering data. In the process of stock ID or surveillance, we're gathering data. And what our objective is, we're putting that data at the fingertips of companies. Who the investor is, what's the contact information, what's motivating the vote, what's motivating the buy, what's motivating the sell, what's motivating a vote against, and their ability to drill down into the investor base and understand them at their fingertips, rather than having to call us and sift through information. They could get it at any time they want. So if they're planning a pretty complex shareholder meeting, they could go through their institutional holders. They could get a better understanding where the vote might end up. If they're looking to do a roadshow and they want to produce a targeting report, they want to be able to go into the system and understand what institutional money is buying what type of companies, or get better insight into the institutions that own their stock. So our objective is to put the data at the fingertips of companies.
I'm sure that's very valuable.
Yeah.
What were the challenges in bringing that to market?
So we were basically targeting more than just one group within a corporate, which in itself is of a challenge. Most of the products that have any type of overlay with Invictus focus on investor relations. There's no platforms out there that focus on the governance side of the house in terms of understanding how institutions vote, what that voting looks like, how processed through to the annual general meeting. So we had to determine what the core objectives were for one audience, the investor relations audience, which is much easier to understand, to a brand new audience, corporate secretaries and general counsels, of what they would need in their workflow to better understand their institutional shareholders. So for us, that research process, while we were working with thousands of companies annually, it made it difficult for us to really figure out, all right, how are we going to integrate ourselves into their workflow stream, which we've been able to solve.
What makes it different than some of the existing platforms that are out there?
A huge differential. So when the typical mainstream companies do surveillance, they're relying on public data and they're relying on antiquated. My firsthand knowledge, they're building it on antiquated information, on information that was garnered years ago from proxy firms, proxy solicitors. And the reason being is when firms were out there getting votes for companies, there's a lot of information that you could get through the process. And a lot of that information relates to institutional money and where they clear through, what the custodian banks are. And you see it through the shareholder lists. You find it through conversations you have with institutional money, and you map it back to public data, and you're able to triangulate who's buying, who's selling through that. If you don't have the proxy data, and we do about 500 annual meetings a year, and we've been doing it for 15 years, and we continually aggregate and warehouse that information and use it as fuel for the Invictus platform. So when individuals want to drill things down and understand, the buyers and sellers, and the underlying information that supports that is coming from another business line of ours, and they're linked together, and there's no one else that's doing that.
And this would also be valuable for, I think, lawyers and as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, that's where we're really starting to separate ourselves. Being that they're the first to the market with such a platform for this audience, we've now opened up an ancillary market for us on the backs of the law firm. So now we can give them an agency view. So with the lawyers, they're working with multiple companies at one time, as we are. We can now give them access to their clients' data in one portal. So it's very easy for them and seamless for them to be able to see what's going on with each client. So the appetite that we've been getting from the lawyer community has just been immense.
Yeah, it's specifically important when you have activist defense attorneys that are working on potential activist campaigns against companies or preparing for one, because if you're relying just on public data, and you're relying just on a 13D filing, what you're not seeing is non-filer accumulations, and they call them wolf packing, smaller hedge funds that follow larger ones. They might not be the forefront of an activist campaign, but they're supporters of it. So in law firms or investment banks, as Kevin mentioned, at the agency level, if they're working on 10 or 20 companies, they'd have access to the trading data, intra-week rather than quarterly. And you're able to fine-tune your defense strategies based on current ownership, not stuff that's stale. And you're able to act fast when all of a sudden you see the ownership levels changing or supporting factors coming in to support an activist investor. Yeah.
Very interesting. So what is your vision, though? Where would you like to take this program?
I think the I'll call it the 3 to 5 year window of this product is moving. It's moving into a more dynamic application, with the use of AI connected to the data that we aggregate on a daily basis. So even when we're sitting here, there's information our systems are gathering from the voting side that's fueling the stock ID side. And with proper use of artificial intelligence, you could do things like dynamic targeting. You could do things like, and where we see this going into market predictability. I'm going to cut my dividend next week. Who might sell? I'm going to have an earnings surprise in a positive way. Who would be a good buyer? Who's buying companies like us based on our current fundamentals, rather than looking at peer group targeting? And then as far as voting is concerned, I want companies to be able to put in their proposals, put in the nuances of a proposal, and the system's going to spit out a vote projection based on voting history, public guidelines, our private, our proprietary information on institutional voting, public NPX data, and fine tune it even with retail, and to give companies a real clear view before the proxy to say, is this going to work or is it not going to work? And allow you to fine tune your proposals and get the projected data ahead of time, so you don't have an issue when you go to a vote.
Okay, very interesting. So thank you so much, Joe.
Appreciate it.